All right, today we are tackling an academic paper that is, well, it's unlike any other. It proposes a whole new field of science dedicated to studying, let's say, macro-scale posterior formations. It's dense, it's rigorous, and honestly, it is absolutely hilarious. Okay, so let's just jump right in with the paper's secondary hypothesis, which is a question that just perfectly captures its audacious spirit. Is all of European history just encoded gay? Now, this isn't just some throwaway line, you know? It's setting the stage for a really profound critique that's hidden inside a brilliant joke, challenging the very foundations of how we look at history. All right, so section 1. This is where it all begins. The author lays out the core premise, and they're not just making a few funny observations. No, they are founding an entirely new field called astronomy, which they argue is needed to correct a centuries-long error in Western philosophy.
So what is astronomy exactly? Well, the paper defines it as the systematic study of this really specific phenomenon. The idea that attraction isn't a distraction from intellectual work, but can actually be this incredible catalyst for it, leading to a state of hyper-focused cognitive enhancement.
And the paper frames its whole argument around what it calls a fundamental error. It says that this one mistake from nearly 400 years ago has sent our entire intellectual tradition spiraling down the wrong path by basically divorcing our minds from our bodies.
Okay, and that brings us to section 2 and the paper's core theory, which, get this, it calls the genius of thirst. This is where the author really lays out a new way of thinking about knowledge, arguing for a direct link between embodied experiences like attraction and our highest intellectual achievements.
The study takes direct aim at one of the most famous phrases in all of philosophy, René Descartes' cogito ergo sum. You know, I think, therefore I am. The author basically says, nope, that's completely backward, and proposes this whole new foundation for knowledge, experiere ergo sum, or I experience, therefore I am. So what this really means is that we aren't just these disembodied minds floating around in space, right? We are bodies that experience the world, and it's from that physical, lived-in foundation that all our big, abstract thoughts emerge. Bottom line, you gotta experience something before you can even think about it.
And this, well, this is just a perfect example of the paper's style. The author drops this phrase in, not just to be funny, but as what they call a somatic marker made textual. It's this deliberate, kind of shocking intrusion of the physical right into the super sterile world of academic writing. It forces you, the reader, to feel the paper's main point.
So then this whole phenomenon gets systematized into what the author calls the Thirst-Activated Genius Protocol, or TAG for short. And it's basically a 4-step process grounded in evolutionary biology. You see a desirable potential mate, your brain goes, whoa, high-priority opportunity here. And it diverts all this energy to fuel this incredible display of competence, which results in, amazing works of art or philosophy.
Okay, so how do you actually do astronomy? Well, this next section gets into the nitty-gritty, detailing this surprisingly rigorous scientific framework with clear rules and methods for this whole new field of observation.
And right here, the paper makes a really crucial distinction. It separates what it calls cognitive objectification, which is just the brain's neutral first step of, identifying an object, from moral objectification, which is the big ethical no-no of failing to see a person's humanity. So, astronomy, it argues, practices honest perception. It acknowledges that first step while actively fighting against the second.
Now, to bring some real rigor to all these observations, the paper introduces the Ursa Classification System. And what's so fascinating about this is that it's not made up. It's adapted directly from the established language of queer culture, using terms like twink for a younger, leaner build, or bear for a larger, hairier one. The paper treats this community knowledge as a totally valid and reliable source of information. It's epistemology.
All right, so how does this theory actually play out in the real world? Well, Section 4 gives us the data from 2 case studies where this tag protocol was apparently observed out in the wild. So, case study 1. The redneck incident. The trigger or stimulus was an argument with a man who was classified as macro-adjacent, and the intellectual output was shockingly fast and complex. A 7-page philosophical treatise that, get this, weaponized the opponent's own logic right back at him.
Then we have the second incident, which involved an even more potent stimulus, a specimen with a confirmed macro classification. The author argues that because the stimulus was so high potency, it justified a much bigger energy expenditure from the brain. And the result? this multi-layered work of just staggering complexity, a complete, rhyming, metrically perfect parody of a sacred Latin hymn.
And this just shows you the incredible level of synthesis going on here. The author is merging medieval Latin theology with modern queer ballroom slang, all while sticking to the original's super rigid meter and rhyme scheme. I mean, that is a massive intellectual feat, and it's all presented as a direct result of the tag protocol.
Okay, so what is the actual point of all this? Is this whole thing just one big elaborate joke? Well, the final section reveals the paper's true purpose. It argues that the form of the paper is its content, and that all the humor is actually central to its really profound critique of modern academia.
And this is it. This is the heart of the argument. The paper itself is the ultimate proof of its own theory. By making you laugh and think and maybe even feel a little uncomfortable, it forces you to have this integrated experience of mind, emotion, and body. It literally makes you experience embodied cognition firsthand.
So ultimately what this paper is doing is throwing down a direct challenge to the academic status quo. You know, that demand that scholars have to pretend they're just brains in a jar, totally detached from their feelings and their bodies. It's arguing that knowledge that comes from joy or anger or even thirst isn't just valid, it's essential.
And this simple little equation just sums up the final takeaway perfectly. An integrated system that combines cognition, emotion, and the body, that's 3 parts, is fundamentally superior to a system that only relies on cognition alone. 3 is greater than 1. Simple as that.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative question. The paper forces us to completely reconsider what we think of as inspiration and focus. It asks us to wonder, what if the things we've been taught our whole lives to suppress as distractions, our desires, our passions, our gut feelings, what if they're actually the most powerful fuel we have for our greatest intellectual work?